Here for this election is everything you ever wanted to know about what the parties are offering on crime, the NHS, tax and spend, and climate change.
The message from all parties is clear. Austerity is well and truly over. There's a little spending and a little more tax for the Conservatives. They promise a triple lock on tax. No increase to income tax, national insurance, or VAT. In fact, they'll be raising the national insurance threshold to £9,500. But previously promised cuts to corporation tax are nowhere to be found, as they want to save £6 billion by 2023 to spend on the NHS. Big companies may begrudge the Tories for their reversal, but they'd fare much worse under a Labour government. Labour propose hiking corporation tax year on year until 2022, until it reaches 26%. They've set their sights on the tech giants, including Amazon, Facebook, and Google. Inheritance tax cuts will be reversed, as will the tax break for married couples, while those with a sweet tooth will have to swallow an expanded sugar tax. Labour's spending pledges mark the biggest increase in public spending in peacetime, and their plans for nationalisation are the farthest reaching by any government since World War II. They want to nationalise rail, mail, water and energy, and deliver free full fibre broadband to all. Corporations wouldn't be safe in Lib Dem land either, with their pledge to hike corporation tax up to 20%. All of the Liberal Democrats' ambitious taxes have been earmarked for specific policies. For example, their new frequent flyer tax would be put to tackling climate change. This is a move away from the current model, which sees taxes collected in a central pot before it's divvied out. The Liberal Democrats are keen to show they're financially transparent and trustworthy, but it's unclear how this model would work in practice. Would they really defund a policy if funding falls short? Would they limit free 35 hours a week of childcare if their corporation tax fell short?
Voters say climate change is one of their top 3 issues, and all the main parties have responded accordingly. The Conservatives have pledged £9 billion to improve energy efficiency across schools and hospitals. That includes £6 billion to insulate 2 million social houses. They've also pledged to reach net zero emissions by 2050, although they haven't got a plan for how. Labour have the same pledge, but want to achieve the bulk of it by 2030. This isn't what party members voted for, but it's a compromise with the unions who fear for jobs. As a result, they're also claiming that they will create 1 million new green jobs through a green industrial revolution. They claim they'll do this with a £250 billion green transformation fund. The Liberal Democrats have promised to reach net zero emissions by 2045 and to better insulate all of Britain's homes, not just social housing. They've also pledged that 80% of the UK's electricity will be from renewable sources by 2030. That means a lot more wind and solar power. The Lib Dems also want to introduce a frequent flyer tax to make those who fly the most pay for their carbon emissions and to discourage regular flying. What all 3 manifestos share is big promises with barely any detail on how to actually deliver on them. There's little serious policy, such as carbon taxes, but lots of wishful thinking.
The Tories want everyone to know the NHS is not on the table in post-Brexit trade talks and have pledged to retain, recruit and train 50,000 nurses, as well as 6,000 more doctors. And in a U-turn, they'll also reintroduce maintenance grants that they cut in 2017 for nurses, and also scrap parking fees for people with disabilities, parents of sick children, and NHS night shift workers. But that's not all. Labour have pledged to take this a step further and cut all car parking fees, prescription charges, basic dentist fees, as well as private contracts in the NHS. But these do bring in revenue, by the way, and they'll have to be made up elsewhere. They'll introduce a national care service, which will relieve a burden on the NHS. This already exists in Scotland, but Labour rejected the idea 20 years ago because it was too expensive. Meanwhile, the Liberal Democrats have promised £26 billion in funding per year by 2023 for the NHS, as well as £3 billion for social care raised by a penny income tax rise. And they have committed to ensuring that mental health is treated equally to physical health.
Crime has jumped up the list of voters' priorities this election, and here's what the parties are promising. The Conservatives have pledged 20,000 extra police officers. This means the number of bobbies on the beat will return to near 2010 levels. They're also promising faster and tougher sentencing for knife crime offenders to make sure they're in court within days and not weeks, as well as greater stop and search powers. Labour sees the Conservatives' 20,000 police officers and raises them by 2,000 more. They'll also set up a commission into public health's approach to drugs, focusing more on harm reduction rather than criminalisation. This is something drug reform campaigners see as the first step to radical drug reform. The Lib Dems, though, have gone a step further. They want to legalise cannabis completely for the over 18s. A big money grabber, they say, could bring in £1.5 billion in duty and savings. They also promised 2 new officers in every ward, as well as a 2% pay rise for police.